When you hear the tone, the time will be 7:45 and 1/4. Bing! Hello, folks. We are listening to Jeffrey Lacasse's testimony tonight. We just had some terrible news from the Sarah Boone trial. I don't know how I missed that, but it got continued indefinitely. And, well, they're having a meeting about it. Another, what do you call those meetings? In May. So we're not doing Sarah Boone, even though we were halfway through her interrogation last night, expecting the trial to start today. But we are going to skip back to the Professor Markel murder case and all surrounding factors, starting part one of our Jeffrey Lacasse trilogy. We're going to look bit by bit at his trial testimonies in 2019, 2022, and 2023. That's the how do we share this screen? Let's get this up here right now, okay? And FSU law professor. Okay, cue tape. Let's go.
Everybody be seated, please. Okay, next witness, Ms. Captain.
State calls Jeffrey Lacasse.
If you'd face the clerk and be sworn, please, sir. Raise your right hand.
I do.
You may proceed.
Sir, please introduce yourself and spell your first and last name.
Yeah, I'm Jeffrey Lacasse, Jeffrey. Excuse me. Last name spelled Lacasse.
How are you employed, Mr. Lacasse?
I'm employed at Florida State University as an associate professor.
All right.
And his trusty childhood sidekick, Sigfredo Garcia. In this testimony from Jeffrey Lacasse, he is a witness in the joint trial of Sigfredo Garcia and Catherine Magbanua, who is his baby mama. Catherine Magbanua, at the time of the murder, was sort of involved romantically with Sigfredo Garcia, but also sort of involved romantically with Charlie Adelson. Now, that's the brother of Wendi, right? You see how this big circle, this big plot scheme happens? Worst of it is that Wendi knew that Jeff was going out of town right at the time of the shooting at Professor Markel's home. And it is believed by many, including Jeffrey Lacasse himself, that he was designed and set up to be the fall guy, be the patsy, be the wrongfully convicted murder suspect for the case. Fortunately for him, by divine intervention, maybe, he left early. He left the night before and was able to produce a receipt from a Kmart where they had him on video somewhere in South Georgia or already in Tennessee, which was his destination at the time. So he was cleared very early on. But he, as we covered previously on this channel, if you haven't seen it, go back and watch the 4.5 hour video of Jeffrey Lacasse's interview with police, where he expertly dissects the case right after it happened back in 2014. And in the multiple trials that have followed since for various different suspects and conspirators, he has shown to be pretty much picture perfect. pitch perfect. He has perfect pitch when it comes to solving this crime. So he has a running count of 3 trial testimonies. Like I said, in 3 different years for 3 different cases. Now, as we all know, mother of the family, Donna Adelson, the mother of Charlie and Wendi, has been arrested, and we are expecting her trial. At first, she was going to be opting to invoke her right to a speedy trial, thinking that maybe the state was unprepared. But I think after some consideration, Donna and her defense counsel, Daniel Rashbaum, and someone else have worked out that maybe the state is not ill prepared, and certainly Georgia Kappelman does not give off the vibe of being ill prepared, unprepared for anything. She's fantastic. She's like a conviction machine, but in a very just way. So anyway, that is who is questioning Jeffrey Lacasse in direct testimony. Within this video, we're going to have 2 sets of cross-examination, one from Sigfredo Garcia's attorney, first of all, and then from Christopher DeCoste, who is representing Catherine Magbanua. That's about enough of an introduction. I'm sure most of you watching this already knew all the information, but it's always nice to just kind of set the scene and wipe our shoes and wash our hands, right? Wash all the blood off our hands, or the Adelson hands, okay? Play the video, God damn it.
All right, what about back in 2014?
I was an assistant professor at Florida State
All
University.
right. And did you have a relationship with Wendi Adelson?
I did.
What type of relationship was that?
We started dating in the fall of 2013. She became my girlfriend around March of 2014.
Okay. And when did that relationship end?
July of 2014.
And when the breakup occurred, was there a big argument that occurred that precipitated the breakup?
We had a argument in late June. She went to South Florida for a couple of weeks, and when she came back, we tried to make things work, and it didn't really work. She sort of cut off contact.
All right. And during that argument, when she went to South Florida, was she in South Florida on July 1st,
I believe she
2014?
was. I dropped her off at her house on June 29th. I believe.
Okay. And during the course of your relationship with Ms. Adelson, did you ever meet her family?
I did.
Who did you meet?
I met her brother. We went to South Florida for alternative spring break, went to a Markel, and I had dinner with her brother. And I met her mother at her house, just very briefly, maybe 10, 15 minutes at dinner. And when I would pick her up and the kids were there with the grandparents, I would have just a couple moments interaction with them. I didn't have a lot of contact.
Okay. And what about Catherine McBanois? Did you ever have an occasion to meet her?
Yeah, I went to dinner with her. I believe it was on March 11th when we went over there to meet Charlie.
Okay. So who was present at that meal on March 11th? And that's 2014?
That's correct. It was myself, Wendi Adelson, Charlie, and Katie. at dinner.
Charles Adelson
Charles
and
Adelson
Catherine
and
Mac-
Catherine McManaman.
Thank
Sorry.
you. What about Sigfredo Garcia? Did you ever have an occasion to meet him?
I did not. I've never met him.
Was Ms. Adelson very close to her parents and her brother Charlie?
Extremely close.
I want to ask you about June 4th, 2014. Do you recall a event that occurred that day that was unusual?
Yeah, I remember a couple of unusual occurrences on June 4th.
Could you tell us about that, please?
Yeah, I had met Miss Adelson at the Red Eye Coffee Shop in Midtown for a coffee about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We were going to talk about our relationship a little bit, and she canceled a trip we had planned to California to visit my parents, which was scheduled for July 11th to 17th.
All right. And was she acting strangely that night?
Yeah, that night, she was a nervous wreck, to the point, I couldn't put my finger on why at the time, to the point where she lived kind of way up Centerville, and there's no convenience stores or anything close, and I actually took about 35 minutes and drove to a convenience store to get her Pepto-Bismol because she was such a nervous wreck and had a real nervous stomach that evening.
Okay. And did she ever tell you what the problem was? Was?
No, she's very nonspecific about it.
Right. Were you aware during the course of your relationship with Ms. Adelson about her efforts to relocate to South Florida with the children?
I certainly was.
All right. And were you in her life when she learned that the court was not going to permit her to take
No,
the
our
children
first
to
date
South
was
Florida?
September 27th,
Mhm.
2013. So that was a topic of conversation on our first couple of dates, but it was in the past when we discussed it.
All right. And was Ms. Adelson happy about the fact that she was not able to relocate?
No, she was quite bitter about it, actually. It was, as I said, a topic that came up, that tone came up on those first 2 dates.
All right. Did she make any statements to you in reference to her brother considering options to take care of this problem with her not being able to relocate?
Yes, she did.
Okay.
Right, Mr. Lacasse, when we broke, we were talking about um, statements made to you by Wendi Adelson about her brother considering options to take care of her relocation problem. What, if any, statements did she tell you to that effect?
Yes, ma'am. On July 13th, 2014, Wendy and I were speaking, and she asked me if she could share something with me confidentially. I told her sure. She mentioned, or she said that Charlie had explored all options to take care of the problem, and that he had looked into having Professor Markel killed. It would cost about $15,000. I later talked to Investigator Isom and said that could have been $50,000. They sound an awful lot alike.
Okay, so you're not sure if she said 15 or 50.
That's right, but I'm confident she made that statement. I just can't remember the exact dollar amount. And she did state that was during the relocation battle the previous summer is when that had taken place.
All right. And the day that she made the statement to you was July 13th of 2014.
Yes, ma'am.
Did Mrs. Adelson tell you anything about the celebration dinner? Anything about a celebration dinner?
Yes.
Could you tell us about that, please?
Yes. A couple weeks after Professor Markel was murdered, we spoke on the phone, and she had mentioned that her and Charlie had gone to this. These are her words. She said, Charlie and I went to what he described as a celebration dinner.
All right. And that was the dinner where she vomited?
That's right. That's correct.
And are you aware, Mr. Lacoste, that Ms. Adelson suggested you as a possible suspect in this homicide?
Yes, I am.
And where were you when Dan Markel was murdered?
I was on the road to Tennessee. I originally had a trip planned for 11 a.m. on Friday the 18th, and I had, at the last moment, changed my trip to Thursday night.
So you left early.
I left early without telling anyone other than the people at the destination. Miss Adelson was the only person I had told in Tallahassee about the time that I was leaving, which was 11 a.m. on the 18th. I had informed her about that in around June 10th.
All right, so originally it was going to be July 18th at 11 a.m. would be your departure?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you be flying or driving?
I was driving.
All right, and it changed to Thursday night, so you left the night before and were in Tennessee at the time of the homicide?
That's correct.
No further questions.
Cross.
Still morning. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning.
Pronounce your last name for me again.
Lacasse.
Lacasse. Okay. Just want to make sure I got it right. Mr. Lacasse. So Wendi Adelson knew you were leaving. Well, you told her you were leaving Friday morning.
Friday morning at 11, we had discussed it because we had some plans that got canceled, so we had discussed it in some detail, actually.
And your plan was to leave Tallahassee and to drive north, I guess, northbound?
Thomasville Road, eastbound, yes, sir.
Sure. Let me rephrase that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So your plan was to travel north of Tallahassee to Tennessee, correct?
That's correct.
And you told Wendy that, hey, listen, I'm going on this trip and I'm leaving Friday morning around 11 a.m., correct?
That's correct.
And do you recall what time the actual shooting took place?
I believe it was right around 11 a.m.
The same exact time that you'd be leaving the area?
That's correct.
And although it was for a business trip, if people didn't know what your plans were, would you agree with me that it may look like you're leaving the scene if you're traveling outside of the jurisdiction?
That's what I was concerned about, that if I had taken my trip at the scheduled time, I would have looked like I was fleeing, because I would have been driving, I would have taken Capitol Circle to Thomasville and been very close to Professor Markel's house, actually.
And when did you find out that Miss Adelson, Wendi Adelson, had suggested that you may be involved in this?
I suspected it from the police interrogations, but they didn't explicitly say that. Eventually, I was able to view her interrogation video.
And by her, you mean Wendi Adelson?
Yes, sir.
And by interrogation video, you mean interview, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because as you're aware, she has not been charged in this case, correct?
I'm aware of that. Yes, sir.
And obviously you haven't either.
Right.
Right. You've been cleared by law enforcement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, let's talk about your relationship with Wendi Adelson. You started dating her, give me a time period.
September 27th, 2013 was our first date.
And how long would you say that your relationship with her lasted?
Well, there's different phases of it. In that fall semester, we weren't exclusive. It was more casual. It became more serious late February, early March. So as far as a serious, I'm your boyfriend, you're my girlfriend sort of thing, just March through July.
Okay. So you started casually dating in September of 2013, and it got more serious at the beginning of 2014, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
And how did you meet Miss Adelson? How did you guys first have a date?
Yeah, through mutual friends.
Okay, so it wasn't like on a social media dating app or anything else?
No.
Were you aware if Miss Adelson was participating in online dating?
I think I knew that, well, I knew that she had dated online in the past. I did not know the time frame.
One of your concerns, okay, so once you guys became exclusive, and by exclusive, I mean you called her your girlfriend and she called you her boyfriend, is that fair?
That's correct. And I was involved with the kids at that point and things like that.
And it got to the point where she introduced you to her family, right?
That's right.
And you indicated that there was a dinner where you met Charlie Adelson?
That's right.
Kind of a good-looking guy, right?
Sure.
Right. Works out?
Yes.
When you went on, when you had your double date, where it was you, Wendi Adelson, Charlie, and Miss Magbanua, did you see what kind of car Mr. Adelson pulled in?
I don't recall seeing his car in the parking lot. We then went to his house, so I saw his garage and got a look at some of the vehicles he owned, but not that at dinner.
What kind of vehicles does he have?
Ferrari is the one that stood out to me.
Do you remember the color of the Ferrari?
I don't.
Did you make any comments to Wendi about the Ferrari?
Well, Wendi used to talk about Charlie having a Ferrari. I mean,
Oh.
that was, she would say, my brother's a character. He has a Ferrari. He has an undercover cop car. He has, I think, a nice Benz in addition or some luxury car.
So she knew what a Ferrari was, right?
Sure. Well, sure.
So it's not like she didn't say he's got.
Did she know what a Ferrari was? Well, I knew it was some kind of car. Um, Probably four wheels and two mirrors. Does anyone know which Ferrari he had? I'm sure we can find that out.
Got a Porsche and you saw
Post it in the comments.
a Ferrari, right?
No, it was a Ferrari, and I actually remember discussing the cost of maintenance with Charlie. There were some downsides to having a Ferrari.
Yeah.
so.
It's tough. So
It's nice that Jeffrey can laugh about this now. There's some downsides to having a Ferrari. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. It's a first world problem right there, huh? My Ferrari is too expensive to maintain.
pretty extensive car collection, right?
But he had multiple cars. Yeah, I don't know exactly how many.
And did you learn what he did for a living?
Yeah, I knew he was a periodontist from speaking with Wendy.
And was that the only night you had direct contact with Mr. Adelson, Charlie Adelson?
That's the only contact I ever had with him that night.
Did he appear to have, did he appear to be intelligent?
He had, that's a difficult question. I just met him the one night. That's a big
I'll
judgment.
withdraw that. Let me
Yeah,
ask a more important question. Was he socialized? Was he drinking that night?
I don't recall if he was drinking. He was holding forth. He was talking a lot. He was confident. That was my impression of him.
He was talking a lot.
Yes,
Did you ever see him go to the bathroom?
I don't recall.
Did you ever see him? Was he perspiring more than a normal person would during dinner?
This is 5 years ago. I don't remember. We were outside and it was, not cool that time of year, but yeah.
Okay, so you're outside in like an open area restaurant.
Yeah, we were at the Yardbird on the patio.
Okay, the Yardbird in South Beach.
Mhm.
Okay. Did you witness Charlie Adelson doing cocaine that night?
I did not.
So this is a guy who's in South Beach, right? Drives a Ferrari, right?
Yes,
What had Wendy previously described him as having a lot of girlfriends?
sure.
Handsome guy, probably could get attention of women.
I would presume so.
But your only face-to-face meeting was that dinner, correct?
Well, that dinner, and then we went back to his house and hung out in his hot tub for a little while, but that was it.
And during that time that you went to his house to hang up in the hot tub, did you see him ever go to the bathroom, or was he ever outside of your personal space?
Yeah, I think all of us were in and out of that hot tub at various points because we were sitting there a little while.
At any point did Charlie Adelson? Now, look, you're a law professor, correct?
Professor of social work, actually.
Correct. Okay. I'm sorry. You're a professor at the university, correct? I apologize, not law professor.
Yeah.
You're an educated person, correct?
Sure.
You'll agree with me that a lay person wouldn't solicit you to commit a murder, correct?
Objection. Argumentative.
Sustained.
I'll re-ask this. Did Charlie Adelson ask you to kill Dan Markel?
Did Charlie ask me to
Did he
kill him?
ask you?
No.
Of course not. And
Mr.
I apologize. I'll withdraw the of course not. And you'll agree.
Why would he ask that question? I just don't even know. Like I said, what does Sigfredo Garcia's lawyer have to work with? Katie's lawyers come up with quite a lot. We've got another series on our channel. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out. On a closer look at Katie McBanawa's defense lawyers, Christopher DeCosta and Tara Kawas, and looking into whether or not they were hired by the Adelson money and whether their defense was as convincing as it appeared to be on the surface. Maybe not convincing is the wrong word, but they seemed to be really fighting for Catherine's interests. But on a closer inspection, perhaps that was never their game plan, and that they were looking to protect Charlie Adelson by actively pointing at him with the intention of Catherine going down. And if they seem like they're fighting for Catherine and she gets convicted, it makes it look like everything they said is untrustworthy. And if part of what they said is, this was Charlie, this was Charlie, this was Charlie, that part of what they've been saying gets thrown into the category of not to be trusted, right? You see, it's a clever little trick, but we're going to be continuing to go through all sorts of videos on Tara Kawas and Christopher Coast and pinpointing exactly where these kinds of examples may be, right? And see what kind of collection we end up with. So be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit like, share, leave a comment, because there's lots of more videos about this case and others coming out very soon, guys. Do not want to miss it. Ring that bell, notifications.
Agree with me that at no point did you give him any reason to believe that you would be someone that would do such a nefarious act, correct?
No.
When the prosecutor asked you about June 4th, 2014, you recall that?
Yes, sir.
And you said that you guys were at the Red Eye Coffee Shop, right?
That's correct.
And around what time was that?
I had a hair appointment at 2 or 3, so it was at 1 or 2.
And so in the early afternoon,
Could have been as early as 12:30, sir. I mean,
12:30.
Yeah.
Okay. So around 12:30 on June 4th, 2014, correct?
that's correct.
You indicated that she was acting, and by she I mean Wendi Adelson, that she was acting unusual.
That's
Would
correct.
that be a fair assessment?
Yes.
Did you ask her what was wrong?
I did ask her what was wrong. It was very, very non-specific. That happened with Wendy quite a bit with it, where she was upset and there was not an exact name put to why.
Was she upset often?
Yes.
Would she get these kind of physical reactions often, that her stomach would hurt or that she would ask you to get her medicine?
I got to know her better in the spring, so I saw more of it than I would have in the fall. That was the only time I can recall that was not an average thing. I think that's why I remember it, because it was unusual.
And you said that you drove about 35 minutes to get her medicine?
Yeah, it could have been 25, 35 minutes, but it's where she lived was not convenient to run to the store. So it was a discussion like, do we want to do that? It's all the way down there. And she was so nervous. I thought, no, I'm going. So
Did she go with you?
no, she did not. She had the kids that night, so she stayed with the children.
Did she make any kind of doctor's?
Wow, I wonder what she did. Was that 35 minutes each way? I mean, 35 minutes is long enough to do something. She is so sneaky. If you turn your back on this woman for 1 minute, she'll be there with a bloody kitchen knife. God, she is scary.
appointments shortly thereafter, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
Now, you indicated that you guys became boyfriend and girlfriend at the beginning portion of 2014. Is that a correct statement, sir?
Yes, sir.
And when would you tell the members of this jury that your relationship with her ended?
Well, that's a little complicated. On July 14th, we went on a date. And when I got home, she had sent me an email saying, I need a week to think. Please don't contact me for the next week. And so that was the Monday before Professor Markel was killed. And then we didn't talk for maybe 10 or 12 days after the murder. So I assumed it was internally, I assumed it was over, that night. When you get an email like that, you're probably figuring it's over. But in subsequent phone calls, she acted as if it was still a slightly open issue. And we closed that down by phone calls that, obviously we're going to move forward, move on here.
Did you ever question her loyalty to you in your relationship with her?
With regularity, yes.
With regularity, yes. Oh, poor Jeff, man. He got thrown around like a wet cat for what, 9 months? You know, he still hurts.
And when you say with regularity, when did you first become suspicious? Now, let me ask this question first. You were concerned that she was seeing other men, right?
I was.
Okay. And when did you first start getting this concern?
Probably March, April timeframe, I started to wonder. So not too long after we became a couple, I guess what I was wondering is, have we really become a couple, or is she still doing what she was doing before? That was
So
kind of
was it like, did you find like text messages or direct messages on social media that made you kind of go, what's going on here?
No, I didn't see any text messages or anything on social media. Her behavior was just erratic. She would disappear. She would get home very late at night. So there were signs like that.
Would you talk to her about it?
I tried to.
Okay. So let me ask you.
Yeah, she'd get home very late at night, you know, after I'd put her 2 sons, her children, to bed. I mean, he was just like a babysitter. You know, he was just a really caring guy that thought he was helping this poor woman through a difficult divorce and readjusting. And, you know, he thought that it was serious. And all the time, she was just like, okay, I need to keep this guy around and then set everything up so that when we kill Professor Markel, it looks like it was him. And part of that is I'm going to need to make him really jealous and then exaggerate his behavior. You know, she was going to her friends and saying, "Oh, he flew into a rage. He interrogated me. He demanded to look through my phone. He's so controlling." And oh my God, you know, just absolutely no care in the world for destroying this man, his reputation, his life. If he'd have been convicted of this murder, you know, it would have been amazing if he didn't get the death penalty. The only thing in his favor would be his standing in the community and not having a criminal record. But there certainly would have been aggravating factors to argue the prosecution. But I can't imagine Georgia Kappelman or Sarah Dugan falling for any of that BS one bit. And they didn't. You know? Even General Isom, you know, never really took this seriously. When Wendi first brought it up, he had to inquire. He had to say, "Tell me about this Jeff character. What kind of car does he drive?" He loves to ask about the cars. Charlie Adelson has multiple cars, and when General Isom is questioning Wendi about Charlie, he says, "What kind of car does he drive?" And she says, "He has multiple cars." And he says, "Tell me all of them." And everybody else who comes in to be questioned he's like, "Yeah, what kind of car do you drive?" "I'm a car guy. General Isom. Close to retirement. I'm going to fix myself up a 1965 Mustang."
Understand that you were concerned about her being loyal to you, or your relationship being a monogamous one?
To be completely honest, I think we kind of pussyfooted around that until we had that big fight at the end of June. That's what that argument was about.
Let's talk about that big fight.
Yeah, sure.
Why don't you walk the members of the jury through what happened?
Yeah, I had taken Wendi to Gainesville with me. I was teaching in the off-campus program at UF for the weekend, so I took her with me.
I'm sorry, was it just you and her, or did she bring the kids?
No, it's just me and her.
So like a romantic getaway to Gainesville?
Well, work/pleasure. I teach during the day. She works in a coffee shop. We have dinner with friends at night, that kind of stuff. You know, It's a nice area down
Sounds
there.
nice.
Yeah, it was nice.
It does sound nice, doesn't it? Doesn't that sound, you know, just like pretty nice? the kind of thing adults do. But all the time, Wendi is just plotting her plan. How can we make Professor Lacasse, Jeff Lacasse, so jealous, you know, without being too obvious about it? We've just got to stir his emotions, you know, with a knife. Stir his heart with a knife. Just stick a knife into his heart and move it around. You know, that's what she did.
And we can start it off fine. The Saturday night, we sort of got into it over this stuff. I confronted her about the fact that I suspected that she had been seeing other men.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So you're at dinner?
We were actually up in the hotel room. The night was basically over. It was pretty late. It was 9 or 10 o'clock at night when this discussion happened.
Okay. And had she had any alcoholic beverages at that point?
We both had, but I think just 1 or 2 glasses of wine a couple hours earlier.
Just socially with dinner, maybe?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
There was no more drinking than that.
And was there, did you say, listen, I think this, that, or the other? Did you have any specifics, or were you just giving a vague, I'm concerned about where this relationship is?
The latter. I was pretty specific. I told her I was very concerned. I was particularly concerned because the way she had framed our relationship was, you're not just becoming my boyfriend. I have children. I'm a mother. It's like I was auditioning for the job of husband and father is actually sort of how it felt in retrospect. So I bonded with the kids pretty tightly. And as you can imagine, their relationship, that kind of discussion gets more complicated when you're serious and there's kids. And she had been talking about me moving in. She had told me not to buy a house. She had told me not to buy a Jeep, that I needed to buy a vehicle that 2 car seats could fit in. So
So it sounds like you guys were heading down that path.
yeah, hence why I raised the issue, because I had some intuitions everything wasn't quite right. Her behavior had been a little erratic, and I was worried about moving in and ending up in a really bad situation.
So would it be fair to say that she was saying the wrong things, but her actions were speaking louder?
Yeah, don't buy a Jeep. Don't buy a Jeep because, you know, Daniel Sack has a Jeep. And when I'm having my affair with Daniel Sack, I won't be able to, you know, tell the two of you apart because all I see is people's possessions and how much they're worth. And if you have the same car, even if it's a different color, but if it's the same color, then it's just hopeless. I couldn't tell the two of you apart.
That's not a bad summary. I was getting 2 very different messages based on behavior or what she was speaking to me, what she was saying.
Did that argument or that discussion, did you feel it the next morning?
What do you mean by feel it, sir?
Was she acting any different the following morning?
Oh, the next day was probably the most awkward car ride I've ever had in my life. We rode from Gainesville to Tallahassee. She was crying. I was very upset. It was a very awkward 3-hour drive.
It's a 3-hour drive from,
3 or 4, however long it is to.
okay, from Gainesville to Tallahassee,
Yeah.
however long that was.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
And this was in June. You said June 20.
That would have been June 29th. That's the Sunday, the last Sunday in June.
2 weeks later, on July.
Yeah, that awkward car ride that was all part of Wendy's plan, you know, to give the appearance of a motive to Jeffrey Lacasse for murdering Professor Markel. You know, he's in the car, 3-hour, 4-hour drive. That's rough. And you know, he's probably thinking, oh, shall I continue with the topic of conversation last night, or should I make small talk, or should I act like it never happened? Should I apologize? All the stuff that he must have been dealing with internally, going through his head all the time. Wendi is sat there just going, that was perfect. We hit it out of the park with that one. He flew into a jealous rage. Not that he did, you know, but whatever the setup was, he questioned her, and that gave her the basis to inflate and reshape the story so that she could tell her friends based on something that happened rather than just an outright lie. Clearly, she way overstated it, and it's very, very clear. I mean, you know, we did another whole 6-part series on Wendi Adelson's long interview with Tallahassee PD. So if you haven't seen that, go back and watch that because because we did a deep dive on that one, guys. It's in our live tab on the channel. But yeah, so yeah, when Jeffrey Lacasse comes up, Wendi makes sure to bring in her friend Jane, who she recently had a conversation with about Jeffrey, and painted this picture of this jealous rage and this unstable man and this controlling crazy man, and all of this stuff. And Jane comes into the interrogation room somehow to support Wendi. The police are buying Wendi's story so much, they said, oh yeah, bring in someone she knows. And Wendi doesn't even really know Jane. It's not a close friend, it's just someone that she identified that she could manipulate. So she arranged for Jane to come in and say, is Jeff this much of a lunatic? And Wendi goes, oh, I didn't even think about Jeff. I hope to God not. I hope. And it's just, there's a few more times during the interview where she's like, yeah, I'd like to speak with General Isom about a potential lead. I really hope Jeff didn't do this, but I see why he's a good suspect. So there's all this kind of language stuff going on where it's very clear that Wendi is pushing for the cops to think it's Jeff, but without wanting to be too obvious doing it. But certainly in retrospect, it is hugely obvious that that is her goal. And Jeff has seen that interview, right?
13th, Wendi tells you, or Wendi has this discussion with you that the prosecutor elicited, right?
Yes.
From June 29th to July 13th, would you say your relationship with Wendi after that long 2 or 3 hour, 4 hour, however long it is, from Gainesville to Tallahassee, emotional car ride, right?
Yes.
From Gainesville to Tallahassee, emotional car ride. Man, it was an emotional roller coaster. Jeff was all operating in his head. Should I say anything? Should I just maintain the status quo? Should I bring up the topic of last night? Should I make small talk? He's a mess. And all the time, Wendi is just sat in the passenger seat going, I played a perfect game. I got him to, she's thinking, oh, how am I going to frame the story? She's picking up all little bits and pieces, points to mention to Jane, so that Jane can come into the interrogation room after the shooting and name Lacasse. Because if Wendi named Lacasse, it would look too suspicious. It would look like she's setting him up. But her plan was, if it doesn't come from me, it doesn't look like my intention. But when it does come up, I'm going to gently push, nudge the cops to think it was Jeff. And Jeff knows that now.
She's crying,
Yes.
upset,
Yes.
and I would assume, well, let me strike this. Did you believe that she was upset? Because like I said, she was saying all the right things, but she wasn't acting like she was talking.
It's very complicated, and she was all over the place, to be frank. And that at one point she was confessing. At one point she was saying, I never did that. She was saying she couldn't remember some things I wanted to talk about, which was frustrating. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No worries. You said she was confessing. Was she admitting to potential talking to other men?
More than talking the night before when we were having the argument, but it was.
What was she saying?
It was a heated discussion, so I don't remember every word of it. But at points, she kind of let it slip out that my concerns were well founded.
Okay.
And then 5 minutes later, she would say the opposite. And when I've had to explain the story in the past, I've had to say it doesn't sound like it makes sense because she was just all over the place. She was hysterical. Really.
Okay.
Well, isn't that just a classic case of gaslighting? I mean, admitting something and then 5 minutes later saying, no, it's not true. I mean, this guy is a professor of social work, right? And I think he has a little bit of professional shame about this, because he got absolutely taken in, sucked in, and was under her spell after the murder. He says, I think it's a couple of months later in the end of August when he goes back to speak to police and says, I've thought of a couple more things. He says in that interview, you know, if she called me tomorrow and wanted to get back together, I'd probably go for it. Even when he knows that he was manipulated. I mean, I think he has a little bit of professional embarrassment because it's his job. He's a professor of social work at Florida State University. A mark of his profession is to identify these kind of antisocial personalities. But because he seems, he's a pretty heart on his sleeve, emotionally driven kind of guy in those areas of his life. Right? And that's not a bad thing. He seems like a very good man. But clearly, the heart has a mind of its own sometimes.
So would it be fair to say at some point she admits to talking to other dudes, I apologize, to talking to other men, and then shortly thereafter denies what she just confessed to?
Well, then that repeat as needed on the car ride back, she was like, I never did any of that stuff. I don't know what you're talking about, which was kind of crazy making for me because she had confessed to some of it the night before.
Okay. So from June 29th till July 13th, would you say you were fixing the relationship at that point? Was it getting better or was it getting worse?
It's hard to tell because on the 29th, I left her house and I didn't see her again until July 13th. She went to South Florida for those 2 weeks.
Did you guys talk on the phone?
We talked on the phone once in a while. We did some video chats. I talked to the kids via video chat and things like that. But it was very up in the air where the relationship was going to go. I would get a mixture of messages verbally and by text.
Would you agree with me that your level of contact with her between June 29th and July 14th was less than it was before?
Oh, it was minimal. It was minimal. Days and days would go by at points without us talking on the phone at least. I may get the random text or something, but we weren't talking a lot.
And then on July 13th, Wendi, in essence, tells you that her brother, Charlie, had looked into hiring a hitman to kill Dan Markel.
In 2013, yes, sir.
In 2013.
Yes.
What was your reaction to this?
It was in the context of a relationship discussion. It kind of just blurted out when he has a habit of blurting things out that are kind of tangential or whatever. And so
So Wendi has a way of blurting things out that are kind of tangential. Well, okay, so she goes off on tangents, and he's said in other interviews that she lacks impulse control. I'm not sure that she does. She's very calculated, That is all part of the mask. That is all part of the gaslighting, to just they're having a conversation about their relationship, and she out of context says, oh, and Charlie looked into all options to deal with Professor Markel, and one of them was hiring a hitman, and it would cost either $15,000 or $50,000, and it's probably 50 because 15 sounds cheap, and we know he ended up paying at least $100,000 up front.
didn't know what to make of it. My stomach kind of flipped. It was like a chilling statement. And then we kind of ended up talking about the relationship again, and so I didn't give it a lot of thought at the time. It was just like a crazy thing that someone would say.
Okay. Very crazy thing.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. Did you take that statement as a threat to you? And let me kind of clarify this. She indicated that because of her bad relationship with Mr. Markel, correct? And you'll agree with me that they had a bad relationship, correct?
That's how she characterized it.
You'll agree with me that she said, based on a bad relationship, that her brother had looked into hiring somebody to kill him, correct?
Well, that was specifically about the relocation, is what she said in that statement. I know they had bad blood otherwise for other reasons, certainly, but that was specifically tied to the relocation battle being lost. That was what prompted Charlie to look into it, according to her statement.
This conversation that you had on July 13th, where was it?
It was in her house on Aqua Ridge.
Was anybody else around when she made the statement?
No, sir.
Did you contact any of your friends after this conversation and discuss the fact that Wendi Adelson had indicated that her brother had looked to hire a hitman?
In what time frame?
Okay, so on July 13th, when the conversation's over, do you stay there that night?
No,
You left.
we ended with me telling Wendi, if you, this isn't gonna work for you, you can text me and we can just break up. I don't want a big thing, you know, like confrontation. And I left for the night. I did not stay.
Do you have like a family member or a best friend that you talk to about personal issues?
I have several, sure.
Okay. Did you call or contact any of them on the way back to discuss what had transpired about? And I'm not talking about the breakup,
Yeah, yeah.
okay? I'm sorry. I am talking about the breakup.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Did you call your friends and go, hey, listen, you know, it ended with me and Wendi?
You know, it's summertime and at FSU, a lot of these people were out of town. Some of them were even overseas. So there was less contact than there ordinarily would have been. But I'm sure I discussed the fact, well, not that night because it was so late. What I remember is the next day when I get this email saying, don't contact me for a week, I certainly shared that with friends because I found it really frustrating. And
Yeah, don't contact me for a week. That was on July, what is it? 17, 16, 15, July 14th. On the 18th, he was shot, right? She sent him an email. They attended an awkward yoga class. And as, you know, he was leaving in the parking lot, she goes, Jeff, are you going to be still leaving tomorrow for Tennessee at around 11 a.m.? Well, if you're not going to go, why wouldn't you go? And you're going to go, right? Because, you know, we've set up this murder and we need you to be driving out of town right at the time it happens. Can we do that, Jeff? You know, I don't want to talk to you for a week, Jeff, but as long as you're leaving town right when Markel gets his face blown off, that'd be great. Can we do that, Jeff? You know, that's all within a week, right? That's within the week of silence that she requested.
surprising and thought it was weird.
Did you share with any of your friends the comment that Wendi Adelson made to you with regards to her brother and the murder for hire?
Yeah, I'm sure I did. I just couldn't tell you who or when I did that, but certainly after the murder occurred, certainly I shared that with people. I also shared it with the police the first day they brought me.
Did anybody see Dr. Grande's video the other day? He revisited this case, specifically looking at whether there was enough evidence against Wendi for her to be convicted beyond a reasonable doubt. And he was of the opinion, although he says it's likely that she is guilty, that it isn't enough. The evidence isn't enough. And I disagree. I think Georgia Kappelman is going to get Mama Donna out of the way and then hit this one home for Wendi. I think she might be arrested while she's in the witness box testifying against her mother, if she doesn't just turn into an owl spontaneously and fly out of the courtroom window.
Right. So you were interviewed by law enforcement in this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
During your interview with law enforcement, did you mention this statement?
I did.
Okay. Did you tell Detective, it was Detective Isom that interviewed
It
you?
was him and Investigator Hale.
Okay. Did you indicate to them who you had shared this information with?
I don't know that I was asked to.
Hearsay.
Judge, it's not for the,
Overruled.
Can you restate the question?
no worries. So when you tell them what Wendi told you about her brother's murder for hire plot, did you say, yeah, listen, you know, I spoke to my buddy, because the murder happened on the 18th, correct?
That's correct.
And so 4 days prior to that is when you got that breakup. Was it an email or a text message?
It was an email.
Okay, so you get a breakup email, and so you call your friends, which is normal, right? And you indicated just a few minutes ago that you probably mentioned the murder for hire to some of your friends, right?
At some point, I just don't know when.
What about, was that before or after your interview with law enforcement?
Was what before or after?
Your discussions with friends?
Well, after I had told it to the police, I certainly discussed it. I'm confident, I may have done it before as well. I don't recall that. But after I told the police that, I did share that with some people confidentially, yes.
Now, she told you, and by she, I'm referring to Wendi Adelson, during your July 13th conversation, that he had looked and the price was either 15 or 50,000, correct?
That's correct.
So it's either one or the other, correct?
Right.
And would it be fair to say, based on your testimony, that she said that that price was too high?
No, she didn't offer any further context or explanation. It was kind of a thing that was blurted out. And then literally 20 seconds later, she started talking about something else, and I can't recall what that was. I think it was the relationship stuff that I was very focused on.
So out of nowhere, she tells you Charlie was going to go look to hire a hitman. It was going to cost $15,000 or $50,000, and you don't go back to that.
I don't know that it was out of nowhere. I believe preceding that was a discussion that if anything ever happened to Danny, she would move to Miami. I think I've spoken to the investigator. I asked him about that previously.
And listen, I have to ask Mr. Lacasse, at no point did you contact law enforcement after you heard of this threat so they could contact Mr. Markel to see if there's any need to protect him in any way, shape, or form?
I didn't.
You know, he carries a little bit of guilt about that, but what are you going to do? Say that my crazy girlfriends just told me that Charlie, that her brother looked into having Professor Markel killed? That's not really going to help his relationship much, is it? And he didn't, like, really take it. He says his stomach flipped, and it was a strange statement, but, you know, people say all the time, I'm going to kill him, or stuff like that. It's fairly commonplace for extreme statements to be made that are not literal, right? It's like an expression, not a very healthy one, but yeah, I don't think he'd have been taken very seriously by the cops or anyone else, you know. And it would have been so easy for Wendi to make him out to be this crazy guy that was going to get her in trouble, trying to get her in trouble, something like that, you know?
Give me 1 second, Your Honor. Just a few more questions, sir.
Sure.
Would I be correct or incorrect in assuming or in saying that you were interested in having a monogamous relationship with Wendi Adelson?
I thought I had a monogamous relationship with
And you wanted to keep it, correct?
Depends when you're asking.
On July 13th, 2014?
Yeah, that's how. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
That's right. That's right.
I'm sorry to ask such personal questions. I know it's difficult.
They are personal questions, aren't they? I mean, this video is from Law and Crime Network, and it's had 660,000 views. Well, there's a lot more people watching it than that, you know. And yeah. I mean, it's not like he's famous or anything. It's just people in the true crime community that follow this case, and there's enough of those. But, you know, Florida's a big place. The United States is a big place. The world is a big place compared to this case. So in the greater scheme of things, I'm sure he gets recognized on occasion, but, you know, he's not a celebrity. He's not Bruce Willis. He's not Jennifer Aniston. Wow. Why am I saying those two? I think they've been in the same film, right? The Whole Nine Yards, which is about a hitman. Wow, that came full circle. Or is it Matthew? No, it's Matthew Perry that's in that. And they were both in Friends. Still, connect the dots. Bruce Willis was also in Friends. And Wendi was friends with Jeff. Wow, we've connected the dots.
Did you think it's unusual? Well, let me ask this. At some point, did you ever see a picture of Dan Markel?
Sure.
Do you think that there's a resemblance between yourself and him?
Everybody always says that. When I was dating her, no one ever brought it up.
Let's talk about that for a second. What do you think? Tell us in the comments. Is there a resemblance between Professor Markel and Jeffrey Lacasse? I mean, I think they kind of had the same shape head. If we think of ourselves as primates, then these guys would be the same. Species or the same tribe, if you know it. Their sense of professional dress is quite similar, you know, smart casual, more smart than casual, I guess, but yeah, hairstyle, furrowed brow. They look slightly similar, not like they could be totally mistaken for the same guy, or you know, even they don't even look like brothers really, but yeah, I guess there is a resemblance. And why is that? Is that just it's a coincidence? Yeah, it is. Ladies and gentlemen, use your common sense. Subscribe to the channel.
I see it from the pictures. In real life, I was never told that while we were dating.
And as you indicated before, you're also a professor?
Yes, correct.
Do you feel wronged by Wendi Adelson?
Do I feel wronged?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I'm really happy that he asked that question. You see, Sigfredo Garcia's attorney, I think his name is Mr. Sanguinet. I'm never really sure how to pronounce that myself. I know it when I hear it, but I don't know what happens. And the spelling is kind of hard. I don't know what the origin of his name is, or his background of his ethnicity, but you know, on the one hand, I think he comes across really badly as an attorney, like a little unprepared, little bizarre in his questions, kind of a reach to a lot of his questions, but his client has pled not guilty. So he has to do something, and he did a lot better than Chandler Halderson's attorneys. Hey, that case is coming up on this channel too, guys. We're going to be discussing that top to bottom. So make sure you're subscribed. We're not just talking Florida. We're traveling all the way up to Windsor, Wisconsin for this one. So that's going to be good. We're going to be covering multiple things in that. His interrogation, the interrogation of his girlfriend, Kat Melander. Many of the trial testimonies. We're going to be having a look at William Brown's. He's the prosecutor for the state. Assistant State Prosecutor Brown gives an unbelievably brilliant opening statement. So we're going to be going through that together, talking about it. So subscribe to the channel.
No further questions.
Dr. Bell? Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, now we're moving on to Katie McBanower's attorneys, who are going to cross-examine Jeffrey Lacasse. It's been a while since I've seen this video, so I'm not sure if they kind of changed the tone a little. And I'd really like to be clued in to how Catherine's team, Tara Kawas and Christopher DeCoste, do they just flip a coin for who's going to examine or cross-examine which witness? I guess not. I guess it's specifically designed, because they both have their unique independent styles as a defense counsel. And, according to whether they want to put more pressure on the witness or whether they want to appeal more to Catherine, or, it's just really interesting how they go through these psychological things to say, okay, who is going to be questioning which witness?
Good morning.
The questions I'm about to ask you are about the investigation into you, not that we believe you're a suspect, okay?
I understand.
You would agree with me at the beginning of the case in July 2014, there was a thought that you were a potential suspect.
That's what I've been told, yes.
You were contacted by the police.
I was.
You came in, you were interviewed.
Yes, I came straight from my trip into the TPD station.
3 separate times you were interviewed, right?
Yes.
Now, they didn't handcuff you at gunpoint and drag you into the station, right?
No, they asked me to come in, so I came in.
Voluntarily went in.
Yes.
You told them what you knew. You explained the information, right?
Yes.
Eventually, you helped them get bank records to show where you were. It was in Tennessee, right?
Yeah, I believe it was cell phone records and a receipt from a Kmart that had surveillance video of me, was my understanding of it.
So they get your bank records. They see a transaction at a Walmart, right?
Yeah, credit card records, yes, sir. Yes.
There's then a receipt.
Mhm.
And then they go actually to the Walmart, get their surveillance footage that shows you there.
So what he's doing here is drawing attention to the fact that the questioning, if we put it like that, of Jeffrey Lacasse was done in a very gentle way, kind of thing. Catherine was surrounded by a SWAT team with big guns, not just handguns, but big guns, while she was driving out of a mall or something, and arrested and cuffed and booked. And but they had so much evidence against her. They'd been wiretapping her phone. They'd identified her as a dangerous murderer. So it's like apples and bowling balls over here. But it's all about the jury's perception. This is the picture he's painting.
It was a Kmart, but yes, sir.
And then you were cleared.
That's correct.
You would agree with me that they objectively investigated you.
Yes.
Now, had they not gotten the bank records, the Walmart video, or anything like that, one could paint a picture that you were involved. Just the fact that you left town right when the murder happened and you had this connection.
Well, except that I wasn't in the state at the time of the murder, so how could I have done it? So that's
What we're talking about here is that somebody could paint the picture
okay.
without all the evidence.
Yeah, they don't have all the evidence, sure.
Let's go to something you said on direct, talking about June 4th.
Yes.
And you appear to have a very good memory of all the instances. You said that Wendi had the kids on June 4th, the night of June 4th.
Yes.
Spent a lot of time with Wendi, spent a lot of time with the kids. You knew their daily schedule of the boys, right?
I knew not so much because I usually got there in the evening. So at the time, I would know what days she had the kids. But as far as pickup times and things like that, I usually saw them at the end of the day. I accompanied her just a couple times to pick up the kids. So I don't want to sound like I'm an expert in that because I'm not.
So June 4th, she has the kids. The next morning, June 5th, she would have taken them to Creative Preschool.
She would have, but I never stayed over there. So when the kids were there, so I wouldn't have known that because I left at the end of the night if the kids were there every time.
That would have been consistent with the custody setup that she had with Dan Markel, correct?
Yeah, depending on what the days on the schedule were, which I don't recall. I used to know that. I don't anymore.
It wouldn't have been that he'd come and pick them up at her house and then bring them over to Creative Preschool.
I never saw that kind of scheduling anywhere.
So it would have been consistent with on June 5th, she would have dropped the kids off.
It would have been consistent if I don't have any primary knowledge of what she did on June 5th.
Let's talk about Charles Adelson. Understanding that you didn't have a close relationship with him, you did meet him and you hung out with him.
Yeah, for a few hours.
To you, and I'm going to use your words, he seemed like somebody that hung out on both sides of the tracks, right?
That's the way he presented himself in that hot tub. Yes.
And you took that to be accurate.
Yes, I took a self-presentation to be accurate. That's correct.
During the day, he's wearing a lab coat or scrubs, whatever dentists wear, right?
Right?
And then when he's off work, he's going out, he's hanging out at the gym with less savory people.
Yeah, that was sort of his characterization. I was sort of repeating what he said. Yeah.
In your words, less savory
Well, not less
individuals.
savory, gritty. I don't remember his exact words, but gritty, something like that. I don't remember his exact words, but yeah, that's how he presented himself in that hot tub. It seemed to be almost a braggadocio kind of thing, like, look at me, I'm on both sides. Yeah,
And you took him to be a street smart guy.
I did.
He had friends that were ex-special ops.
Yes, that's what he said. Yeah, that's what him and Wendy said. Yeah.
His gym friends that
I love Christopher DeCoste's, what do we call it? Intonation. He had friends that were ex-special ops. Do you remember when he questions June Umchinda and he's like, Miss Umchinda, if you could tell this jury what it's like for a woman in Miami to hear banging at the door in Miami where all the criminals live. And he wants June to like say, yes, it's scary for a woman. So that the jury says, okay, it must be scary for Catherine as a woman, right? But he kind of oversells it. That's another thing we're going to be looking at in our examination of Tariq Awas and Christopher DeCoste, because their tactics have a lot going on, you know? And I have a huge hunch that it seems like one thing, but it's really another. And that's what we've started looking at. We've got more videos coming on that subject, guys. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell so you always get a notification when we go live so you can join the conversation, right? That's what it's about. Sharing knowledge. Knowledge is power.
to you almost came off as nefarious.
Well, yeah, and I don't remember the details at this point, but he was talking about deals they were doing. There was a lot of hinting and innuendo. But yeah, you're accurately presenting how he presented to me.
Let's go now to the dinner on March 11, 2014.
Sure.
It was outside, it was on Miami Beach.
Yeah.
If you remember, and you may not, do you remember seeing a pickup truck with two gentlemen outside of the restaurant watching you guys?
No.
Let's go now to July 14th, 2014.
Okay.
Now, you had met Catherine McBanwa several months prior to that.
Yeah, I met her in March.
So March, April, May, June, July. Wendi is opening up to you and saying what her brother had looked into doing, right?
I think you're talking about the 14th. You're talking about the 13th, I think.
July 13th?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So July 13th, 2014, she's talking about her brother hiring a hitman. She's giving you incriminating details, right?
Yes.
Never said anything about the involvement of Catherine McBanwa, right?
No, it was 3 sentences, so no, she didn't.
All right, let's talk about now the options that he looked into doing to take care of the problem, right?
Right.
On direct examination, the state attorney's office asked you what year it was. But there was more specifics to that. It was specifically the summer of 2013, right?
Yes, it was attached to the relocation. So whenever it was after relocation had failed, where she'd been denied the motion for relocation.
But I want to make sure it's clear because we didn't have the full information from
Yeah.
direct examination. What Wendi told you is that her brother looked into hiring a hitman in the
Little diss on Georgia Kappelman there, you cheeky Christopher DeCoste, you.
summer of 2013.
That's correct.
And that would have been before he even knew Catherine McBanwa.
Yeah, I don't know when they met, but if you say so.
One brief moment, Your Honor. No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Redirect.
Mr. Lacasse.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, Georgia Kappelman gave a very brief direct examination. We've had Mr. Sanguinet and Mr. DeCoste give cross examinations, both longer than George's. We're 40 minutes in, guys, and there's about 25 minutes left to go. I can't remember if the other attorneys get a go after this, but George is going to hit this one home. The hometown girl brought it home, whatever he says on the jailhouse calls.
The breakup email on July 14th, 2014. I know you had some phone contact after that, but was that basically the end of your relationship?
That's the last time I ever saw her.
Okay.
We did have some, it was in August. It was after we didn't talk between then and after the murder.
Okay.
We're
And you
talking-
never got back together and resumed your
Oh,
relationship?
no.
No further questions.
All right, did you ever have a question of this witness? Write your question down.
Oh, okay. Very brief from Georgia, but we're going to have jury questions now. That should be very good value. Let's see what they have to say.
We'll go sidebar. So, series of questions from the jury. The email, the July 14th, 2014 email was that on a FSU website or a private website? Do you have any recollection?
I think that was from Wendy's Gmail account.
Okay, what about to you?
Oh, that would have been to my Gmail as well.
Okay. So the answer is no, it was not on an FSU website.
Correct.
Okay.
To the best of my recollection, yeah.
Okay. Did Ms. Adelson indicate that she wanted to?
What is that question about? Like, what bearing does that have? Was the email sent on an FSU email? Like, .edu or whatever it is for universities? I guess if it was, then they're wondering if they have a record of it or what. The jurors can ask anything they want, don't get me wrong, but I don't know what probative value that has to help support or discredit his testimony.
Relocate to have the children full time?
She didn't talk directly about relocating because she knew that was no longer a possibility. But the other side of that coin, how unhappy she was in Tallahassee and how frustrated she was by the child custody were issues that came up, if not every day, every week, that came up very frequently.
Okay, so that was actually the next question about, she frequently spoke about the divorce and the custody battle.
Yes, consistently throughout the entire relationship.
And did she appear distressed when she didn't have the children with her?
Sometimes, yes.
What kind of vehicle were you driving back in July 2014?
I was driving a 2004 four-door silver Nissan Sentra.
Not a Ferrari? Did Wendy get confused and think that was the Ferrari? Because she doesn't know the difference between, a 2004 Nissan Sentra, a Porsche, or a Ferrari, apparently.
Ms. Kaplan?
She drives a minivan. She's a very simple woman, ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
No further questions.
Garcia? McBanum?
Nothing.
All right, you can step down. Do we need to keep this witness any further?
Judge, I'd like to release him to go about his business, but I'd like him to remain under the rule.
All right, you can remain under the rule of sequestration, so don't discuss the case with anyone, but you're free to go about your business. You have a phone number for him if you should
Yes,
need it.
sir.
All right, thank you. You may step down. Call your next witness.
Stephen Lutz.
Well, that's it, folks. We're not going to do Stephen Lutz in this video. This is part one of our Jeffrey Lacasse trilogy, his testimonies from 2019, 2022, and 2023 in the respective trials of those years. So that's it for tonight, folks. On the whole, very reliable witness. From what I remember, his testimony in 2022 is a little more in depth. Now, we won't be having Sigfredo Garcia's attorney questioning him on that occasion because Sigfredo has already been convicted at that point. But Catherine, who received a mistrial in this trial, will be, her lawyers are going to be back questioning him. I can't remember if it's Sarah Dugan or Georgia Kappelman that's going to be doing the direct. But that's a really good one to sink our teeth into. So come back tomorrow, same time, 9 o'clock in the evening, Greenwich Mean Time. I believe that's 4 in the afternoon Eastern. Yeah. Remember to like, share, leave a comment. We've got loads more content coming out on this channel. Ezra McCandless trial we've got coming up very soon. I mean, it's already been done, signed, sealed, delivered, but we're going to be having a look at the backstory, the trial testimony, and the witness impact statements. Following that, we're doing, we're trying to get away from the spousal revenge killings and move on to family annihilation. Doesn't that sound like a cheerful, good old time that we're having? So we are going to be covering Grant Amato and Chris Watts very soon. We may be waiting to do Chris Watts until we've got our reliable internet connection in our $1 million custom-built studio. I've been visiting the new premises today, and it's all coming along. We did get our brand new marble freshly cut and shipped from Italy, and that's being installed as part of the sound deadening. So anyway, if you'd like to follow along with our master build, you can get us on Twitter at TrueCrimeMetrics_official, or see us on Instagram at TrueCrimeMetrics. We've got photographs and updates coming from the live studio build, and that should be up, ready, keys in the pocket by the end of February. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, like, share, leave a comment, and we will see you tomorrow. Looking forward to it. And Sarah Boone, keep your heels dry, and we're coming to get you for the rest of your interrogation. We started doing you last night, and we're going to take a little break to go and re-wet our feet with the Dan Markel case and all surrounding factors, many different subjects, chapters, playlists we've got coming out on that. Again, don't be a fool. Don't use your common sense and subscribe to the channel. Okay, good night, guys.